Good day, everyone. I'm recording a video today on ChatGPT. I did one previously, deleted it based on a comment I received with an issue that I made with the references. So I'll go over that, some pitfalls that I'm still learning with ChatGPT. So Andrew, if you're listening again, thank you for that. But I want to introduce people to ChatGPT and kind of what it can do for you. And what I've mostly used it for is seeing how it would do with some how-tos in Excel and Arc Pro, primarily to see how it generates it to where students could potentially use it. So if you're not familiar with ChatGPT and OpenAI, you'll have to create an account. So you'll get an email verification, then you have to get also a text verification. Once you do that, it'll generate a window like this to where it might have a light window for you. I'm just changing mine to dark, and I'm going to clear my conversations just so I can start over. It's been a little slow for me today. And each time I've tried to do this video, it's had a high volume issue to where it's taken a while to record anything or generate any response for me. The cool part is it does give you examples of what it can do, some of the capabilities and limitations. I'll go over the pitfall that I made in a bit, but first, oftentimes you might be interested in like just what can this do? So I start out, I can just simply ask what is crime analysis in 200 words. When you do this, it's going to pull from open information that it's collected and generate a response on what is crime analysis. As you read through this, this is a pretty good definition of what crime analysis is. For those of you in the field that read about it in class or just general knowledge, it hits many of the main points, and most people I think would be fine with the response that you get here, given the 200 word limit that I applied to this. With that, since I typically teach hands-on more applied classes, my interest was really getting into how could you use a tool like this. So say you were getting sick of using Google all the time or you weren't finding the correct response that you wanted. I typed in a couple times so say you're in Excel, how to combine cells. And if you're familiar with Excel, there's a number of different ways you can combine cells. You might want a simple merge, or as it generates here, concatenate, which I've used concatenate for years. The shorter version of it's concat now, but if you're familiar with it from a crime analysis field, taken, for example, you're trying to piece together an address that has different columns for the address number, the prefix, the actual street, say even the direction, and then the suffix at the end. So you want to combine all of those into one cell so you have a full address that you can potentially geocode afterwards. Concatenate can work and we'll do that. It's a bit timely, and if you're familiar with the older way of doing it, it can be a tough part to do. Excel does have other ways to do combining of cells, but this is one way. I do recommend trying this step by step. I say that in terms of what it spits back, and we'll do some other examples up here. You might have to do another step. It might not give you every step, and that's where I'll probably have some interns work with ChatGPT and then go through the steps that they provide and see if there is anything missing. And I'm always a fan of visualization, so we'll still make the how-to guides. I just like the screenshots and a much more of a visual tool, but we can probably use ChatGPT to assist in some of that and find some other ways to do like tasks, because Excel, for example, has a ton that you can do within it. One that I've been toying around with more so is in ArcGIS Pro, how to run random forest to see how it kicks it back for you. Done this a couple times in Arc Pro now, just getting the hang of it. There are other, obviously, spatial analytical approaches, but this one will walk you through the steps to run the random forest tool within Arc Pro. I like if you're not familiar with, say, the platform Arc Pro, the toolbar in the search would point you to this automatically, but it does give you a nice step-by-step here. And this one's not as step-by-step as it's generated for the past for me. It points you to the random forest tool and not so much the parameters you need in it. So I'll try another one, how to run, let's say kernel density in Arc Pro. So again, asking about an Arc Pro specific question and how to run kernel density. And here it's starting by loading your data, make sure it's in a proper format. So within this, you probably need a projected coordinate system. Go into your toolbox, analysis tool, run the density tool. Depending on how I type this question, and I've done it a couple different times, it will generate different responses in terms of one, I've had all the parameters stated here and which ones you have to fill in. So I could ask, what is the parameter selections and kernel density and arc pro, and see if it will pull those up for us. So you have your input layer field, your output, cell size, and there it's starting to generate for us. So previously, depending on how you word the specific question, it does spit back a bit more detail. I've had this part of the prior response. I probably worded it just a little differently, but it does give you that ability to ask more specifically on it. And if you're asking similar questions throughout the entire chat, so you can start new chats on a specific topic, it tries to remember from earlier in the conversation, so it tries to link it or connect the dots that way as well. Now, where I made the mistake, and I'll walk through it here on the prior video, is I asked, what is crime pattern theory? So I'll ask that again. What is crime pattern theory in 150 words? So what this is going to give a theoretical overview of what crime pattern theory is. If you're familiar with it, Branningham's work from the primarily 80s forward that gets the citations for this. So what I did after I typed a question like this is I then ask, what are 10 citations for crime pattern theory? And this is the mistake I made. It's going to generate 10 citations. I said citations here, but in the prior video I put references. It's going to generate those references for you. ChatGPT can pull the authors, the year, and essentially it knows what a reference looks like. The issue is these references that it's actually creating for you might not exist in actuality. The Brantingham one does. 1981 is the often most cited one. Not sure if that's the correct publisher though, so that we see some issues there. I thought it was Sage, but I could be wrong just off the top of my head. But it's pulling a lot of big name people that we would familiarize with environmental crim. You have Eck, you have Sherman, you have Weisberg, you have Bowers and Johnson, Hirschfield, Clark, Cohen and Felsen. So it does pull up the actual correct routine activities one, so that's interesting. But again, these might not all be correct. It's creating references, but that might not actually exist. And that's where I say knowledge points and double checking the work is always needed. But with this, these might not all exist as 10 references, and they might not all, even if they do exist, relate to crime pattern theory at all. The first time I did this, and when Andrew corrected me, one of the citations that was correct didn't even really reference crime pattern theory at all, which is problematic. So if you're relying on this from an academic standpoint, if you're a student trying to generate a paper and then have a reference page of 15 sources on it, it'll generate it, but it could be incorrect, and there's now tools to offset that and run it through to see if OpenAI did generate that for you. So I say caution. I learned this. I took it with a grain of salt, or I did not take it for a grain of salt. I just looked at it and expected it to be correct without really diving into what was going on behind the scenes and playing around with it a bit more. You can ask, so say I wanted, since Felsen and Cohen popped up here, so what is routine activities theory? And let's say 500 words with in-text citations. Let's see how it does with something like this. And I love that it uses the acronym. I'm a big fan of it, just given, even with crime pattern theory and rational choice, once you talk about this for a while and write on it enough, typing that out each time, not that it's a huge effort, becomes just a little bit cumbersome. So I'm a fan of the acronym or abbreviation for it. Some of you I know are not, but to each their own on that. But here we ask for in-text citations, and it did pull the correct in-text part with Cohen and Felsen 1979. The Felsen 1994, I'm assuming, is the Crime in Everyday Life series of books. Eck and Weisberg, I would have to just double check. Knowing how it's used in that specific sentence, it can be. It's a very generic, general sentence itself. And even the EC one here, I mean, it's a very generalized comment, but I would have to check to see one, if this reference does exist, and if it does hit on this to where if you're still trying to find references and in-text information, truly go find these papers, read them. If it's a book, read the book, but see if these are actually real citations. And if you're not familiar with it, I have a video on how to use Google Scholar and just searching for journal articles itself. If you have Google Chrome open, you could just highlight, say, the title of it, right click, search Google Chrome. If I go into scholarly articles, we'll see if it pops up. We see that implementing problem-oriented policing from innovation to mainstream and crime and delinquency does not pop up. So again, it's pulling information, and it's actually from, I pulled this title, linked it to X work, which if we come back to the screen, it has an EC 1994, implementing problem-oriented policing, which, oops, I didn't mean to exit out fully. This is from 2003, and let's see if EC is in this at all. Not seeing it, so that's, oh, there's EC. So EC is in this book, but it's not citing it correctly, and that's where you can run into some of the issues like I did in the prior video. If not double checking to see what it's generating for you, it knows how to, essentially, again, it knows how to put in-text citations within a write-up. It doesn't always reference it correctly. That's the big issue, that if you're not familiar with a write-up, you need to go through and check what it's generating. And that even works, like I said, with a lot of the data analytical side of the syntax that it can spit out in different codes or different program for different languages. So with that, I just wanted to introduce it. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. I'm still learning how to use it in some of the pitfalls of my lovely issues itself, but it does have quite a few videos out there on how to use it. I've seen more so a lot of videos that I've watched on how to optimize ChatGPT for some work in Excel, just because I'm interested in learning more in that, since most of my students have an interest in that. Until next time,